Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Good morning, or good evening, I guess. This is Mike Smith and Marty Gallagher. We're here to do a candidate forum for Fact TV for the 2022 elections coming up on November 8th. Our first group of candidates will be the candidates for state representative. We have Tyler Austin, Michelle Boss-Lund, Bonnie DePino, and Leslie Goldman with us, and we're going to ask them a series of questions, and they're going to answer. This is done by Zoom, so it's not actually a debate. It's more of a series of questions and statements. Each person will have 3 minutes to respond to the questions. They've seen the questions in advance, and at the end of the round of 3 questions, we'll have remarks by each of the candidates, and we'll go around again. So today we're going to go in order of Bonnie DePino, Michelle Boss-Lund, Tyler Austin, and Leslie Goldman. So, okay. Marty, you want to go with the first question?
So, Bonnie, the first question: if elected, what would be your top 3 priorities? Bonnie, are you there?
We can't hear Bonnie. You have to unmute.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
There we go.
I got it. Thank you. My top priorities would be supporting school choice and homeschool, working around election integrity, and talking about the let me see, I have the notes. And talking about the current articles that are up for ratification on this election cycle.
Okay.
Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah,
on
you have
that?
about a minute and a half, Bonnie. Would you like to elaborate on any one of those?
I think I could talk for a long time on Article 2 and Article 22. What people don't realize is Article 2 already bans slavery in Vermont. So we don't need to remove the word slavery. If we do, it reduces the impact of the current article.
Okay. You still have about a minute if you have, something else you want to emphasize.
No, they can go ahead.
Okay. So moving on to Michelle. If elected, what would be your top 3 priorities?
Okay. Michelle, do you want to unmute?
Sorry. The top 3 priorities for me would be what I believe need to be the top priorities for the state of Vermont, which include working on our housing, working on our workforce issues, and addressing climate issues. If you look at each of those 3 areas, they have a substantial impact on our communities, on our homes, on our families, and they're going to make a difference. If we can't address those issues, they could dramatically impact our ability to continue life as we know it here in Vermont. Within those 3 categories, a subcategory that it's a passion for me is working on issues that impact youth and families. And if you look at work within the workforce, if you look at policy issues related to housing, those are both very integrally tied to work that is going to impact children and families. So I've heard from many, many residents in the 3 towns of Brookline and Rockingham and Westminster how difficult they're having challenges in terms of finding affordable housing. I've met many people who have been small business owners who can't find people to work in their businesses, and they're having to close their shops for some of the hours because they can't find people to work for them. We also have issues with childcare where people can't find or afford accessible childcare, and therefore they cannot re-enter the workforce, which also limits their family income and causes negative challenges for families. So housing and workforce, I think, are very intertwined. They impact individuals, they impact communities, and they're at a critical level right now. Climate, I think, impacts everything. Vermont is a beautiful state. We have a lot of natural beauty. We have water, we have air, we have land, we have trees, but we have to take care of that. And if we don't address transitioning from fossil fuels to a more sustainable form of energy usage in our state, we're going to have problems with the future that's going to impact what's possible for all of us. So those are the three priority areas that I hope to work on. Okay. Housing, workforce, and climate, and then with a focus on how that will impact youth and families.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Great. Okay, we are moving on to Tyler. If elected, what would be your top 3 priorities? Tyler, you need to unmute.
But of course, thank you for. Vermont's students have borne the brunt of the consequences of our current top-down, lockstep uniparty government. This is why so many parents I've spoken to have 3 basic concerns. First is the prospect of mandatory COVID shots as a precondition for attending school. This is despite the benefits of these shots being not documented and greatly outweighed by its documented serious risks. So vaccine mandates coming your way. I'm against those. Stop, full stop. Secondly, the prospect, these parents say, of their children returning to the policy of masking in school is something that they find extremely alarming. And again, masking has dubious, undocumented benefits, while the documented, peer-reviewed proof of social, developmental, mental, and physiological harms associated with prolonged mask use are voluminous. I have a paper with 160 references to such studies. So they don't want their kids mandatorily vaxxed. They don't want their kids masked. And the third, and maybe the most important to them, is the fact that they could have a child come home and decide that they want to go on a gender bender and decide that they want to take hormone therapy to change their gender. And if the parent objects or does not support this decision, the parent really, thanks to our legislature now, doesn't have a fallback position. A lot of people I've spoken with find this, frankly, extremely frightening. And as a representative, I am committed to making sure that minors are not enticed or into or able to chemically castrate themselves with school support.
You have about 30 seconds, Tyler.
So, no masks, no mandatory shots for COVID, and I'm going to work to reverse this policy of chemical castration of minors.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
You're up.
Oh, no, don't we have one more?
Oh, we have Leslie. Sorry. Got a little confused. Leslie, if elected, what would be your top 3 priorities?
Thank you. Before I start, I just want to thank Fact TV. I want to thank you, Marty and Mike and Alex, and the rest of your staff for hosting this forum. Really appreciate the opportunity for this conversation. So my top 3 priorities are healthcare, our rural economy, and climate change. I'm going to start with healthcare. I am a retired family nurse practitioner. I spent the last 2 years serving on the House Health Care Committee. As a committee member and talking with constituents, I've heard firsthand about the difficulty of accessing, and paying for health care. We accomplished several things in the last session to start to address these problems, but there's more work to be done. I'll talk about 3. First, Vermont has a nursing workforce shortage, in part due to COVID, but there are other reasons as well. There is insufficient faculty to educate new nurses and fewer students pursuing a nursing career. We passed a budget that includes solutions to this problem. Second, access to mental health services has been challenging during the pandemic for adults and children. We expanded access by creating licensing process for telemedicine, which makes it easier for out-of-state providers to offer care to Vermonters while protecting Vermonters from incompetent or unethical practitioners. And third, our hospitals are fragile. Remember Springfield Hospital's bankruptcy. Next session, we will focus on hospital sustainability, as well as increasing access, improving quality, and reducing costs for Vermonters. My second priority is building our local economy. We need to build our workforce, and in order to do that, we need housing and childcare. I supported the Workforce and Economic Development Bill that was passed in the last session. It includes support for expanding the healthcare workforce, scholarships for trades, and for forgivable loans for business, support for the creative economy, among other things. But critical to building that workforce, we need infrastructure to support workers and their families to stay in and move to our area. This includes housing and childcare. As for housing, our corner of Vermont has very low rental vacancy rates. We need more housing for low and middle income workers. The legislature has addressed this with a number of incentives. The Windham Windsor Housing Trust project at the old garage in Bellows Falls is a great example. Now for childcare. In order to support working families, safe and reliable childcare must be accessible. In 2022, we passed the Child Care Assistant Program, which will help more families in Windham 3 afford childcare. In summary, the expansion of housing and childcare availability will lead to attracting workforce to our area. Expanding workforce training and opportunity will improve the business environment in our region and support our tax base. My third priority is climate change.
Yeah, and you're out of time.
I'm out of time. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get to my climate thing at the end.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Leslie. We're going to go back to Bonnie. We're going to do a second round, of a second question. And that question is, Bonnie, what would you see as the most important skill for a member of the House? And I guess as a corollary to that, how do you demonstrate that skill? Bonnie? You have to unmute.
So I think the most important skills would be the ability to listen and the ability to do and absorb research. Because you can't just claim something will happen if you take a certain action if you don't know that. Then you have to be able to listen to your opposition to come to some sort of agreement.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, again, what do you see as the most important skill for a member of the House and Senate? And then what would you say in the corollary of how you demonstrate that skill? Okay. You have to unmute.
Sorry, muting and unmuting, not good at that. Try again. Actually agree with Bonnie that listening is one of the most important skills that a legislator can have, and learning from others is one of the most important skills a legislator can have. But then you need to take time. Once you listen and once you learn, you need to be able to cooperate, collaborate, and compromise. So that isn't only one answer, it's multiple answers. But in terms of the second part of your question, Mike, I would say that one of the things that I've had a lot of experience doing in my life is exactly that. I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, and I've worked in restorative justice. So one of the things I've done for a living is worked with people as they learn and process information and try to come to new realizations. So one of my last jobs I had before I started working as a legislator was working for the Community Justice Center. And I worked with individuals who had recently been released from prison, who were facing a lot of challenges in the community. And we would listen and we would learn with other volunteers about what these individuals' lives were like, what their challenges were like, and we would help them come up with some next steps that would help them reintegrate into the community. And so that's only one example in one part of my life, but certainly listening, learning, working together, and compromise is a big part of what I've done in my life as a human, and it's a big part of what I've done as a legislator, and it's something that I'm happy to continue to work on.
Great, thank you. I don't know what you did to your sound, but it just improved exponentially. You did a nice, it really got better. So that was good.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. I don't know either. All I did was push the mute button.
All right, thank you. Tyler, what would you see as the most important skill for a member of the House? And then as a corollary, how would you say you demonstrate that skill?
I'd like to thank Michelle and Bonnie. I agree that collaborative skills and listening are extremely important. However, one that I'm going to emphasize for being, especially at this juncture, an important skill is the ability to think critically and to take in data, to process, to look for other points of view, to look for documentation of the scenarios that are being used as the basis for determining public policy, and then to be able to put those facts that you find together and to put it together a persuasive case that other people can take or reject. I'm in sales, so I understand that people will do what benefits them, and we just need to understand that the value proposition for providing information that allows them to make an emotional choice based on enough logic to put them over the finish line. But a lot of politics, though, cannot come from that status of an emotional choice. It has to come from rationality. It has to come from the Enlightenment. It has to come from rational thinking. And I'm going to get to this in a little bit, but the thing that I can do, I'm going to make some claims here. I'm going to say some things that are probably going to upset some people. And I've come to them by having done research and evaluating data and looking to sources other than the scenarios that are broadcast to us through normative channels. So I think that it's important to be able to find and evaluate many sources of information and to come to conclusions that and share a reasonable argument for policy positions that might not actually be in full agreement. So there's the ability to think rationally, there's the courage to follow through on your convictions and to state your positions clearly. And then there has to be a moral compass, in my opinion, where true north is the Constitution, the
30
freedom
seconds.
of the individual, and the least restrictive means of governmental interference in people's lives.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Leslie, what would you see as the most important, did I do that right? Yeah. What would you see as the most important skill for a member of the House, and how would you demonstrate that?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. The job of a legislator is very complex, but the basic skills are similar, whether we're up in Montpelier or back home in Windham 3. Everyone has said that we have to be able to listen closely to our colleagues and to our constituents. There's no argument. That's very true. That's the first thing. Second, we have to be committed to doing research. and to be able to critically evaluate that research. I agree with you, Tyler, whether it pertains to a bill under consideration or to a constituent question. Third, we must be available and communicate clearly our position on issues, both while in Montpelier and back home. And lastly, and in fact, I think this is most important, we must be flexible, realizing that our conversations and research will likely challenge our assumptions and require us to rethink positions. So I think we always have to be open to new information and to respond to that new information. I learned those skills as a practicing nurse practitioner. Every time I went into a room, there was a new person. I had to listen. I had to learn their story. I had to then solve problems with them. Taking this to Montpelier has been very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Next question.
Moving on to question 3, we're back to Bonnie. Bonnie, what would you do specifically to help the citizens and the businesses of Windham County?
I think I would try to get more students involved in work. We have a problem with our student body graduating high school and leaving the area. We need to draw them in. We need to make salaries attractive. We need to make the jobs attractive to young people so we can keep them here in Vermont.
Okay.
There are several agencies and ways at the high school where I work to help kids find those jobs that can keep them here.
Great. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I didn't want to accidentally cut you off, Bonnie. Okay, we're moving on to Michelle. What would you do specifically to help the citizens and the businesses of Windham County?
So I have a lot of ideas about ways that legislation could end up helping both citizens and businesses in Windham County. One of those is continuing to work on the childcare issue. I was one of the co-sponsors of H-171, which brought together almost unanimous support, not unanimous, but very strong support of legislators in trying to work to develop a childcare system that was going to be more accessible and more affordable. And one of the goals that we had at that time, and which we have not accomplished yet, is trying to get it so that families have available childcare, which would not cost them more than 10% of their family income. I've heard from some families that they pay up to 30% of their family income in childcare. And that's not sustainable. When it's 30% to pay for your childcare, often the family members will stay home instead of going to work. And that can cause a lot of other problems. So certainly working on childcare is one of the specific areas that would both benefit employers in terms of making their employees able to show up for work. And it also will benefit the families in terms of getting people back to work when they're ready to do that. Another is really important is working on controlling rental rates. I have a constituent in Putney who rented her house, a 2-bedroom house in Putney, for $1,350 2 years ago. A year ago, when her rent agreement was renewed, it was $1,700. And this year, when she was going to sign her rental renewal for the 3rd time, her landlord told her it was going to be doubled, and it was going to be $3,400 for a 2-bedroom apartment. And so she moved out. That's not reasonable. Constituent asked me, why doesn't the legislature pass a law that would limit the amount of increase that a rental agreement could move to from one state, from one year to the next? And I think that's really something that we should look at. There are other states that have done that, and I think we really need to do something to control our rental rates so that we're not going to be losing all of our citizens, because young people and people with more compromised incomes, they're not going to be able to keep up with that.
Yeah, Bonnie, you're cutting out a little bit. Michelle, you're cutting out a little bit.
Okay, I don't know what else I can do. I might.
There you go. Stay right there.
Maybe
right there.
move in a little bit closer.
Another thing that I'd like to work on is workforce incentives. We passed some really great legislation related to providing scholarships for nurses and having loans repaid for nurses if they stayed and worked in Vermont. And I would like to see us expand that to other high need areas. I would like to see us expand that in teaching. I would like to see us expand that in other childcare related fields. And I would like to see us expand that into emergency services. There are a lot of areas where we are not able to find enough workers to do the jobs that are critical to our state, critical to our children, and critical to our people. And doing these kind of incentives that will help to train people and also help to forgive their student loans if they stay and become employees in Vermont, that's going to really work to serve our interest.
Perfect. And whoops, you're out
Another
of
thing that I
time.
would like to work on in terms of education is connecting our vocational centers with local businesses that are needing.
Michelle, you're out of time.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay. It was a little convoluted, cutting in and out. So we gave you a few extra seconds on that.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries. Tyler, what would you do specifically to help the citizens and businesses of Windham County?
Well, the factors that are coming into play, we have a housing crisis and we have an opioid crisis. But one thing I haven't heard spoken about is the fact that we had a recent study from UVM and the University of Maine that indicated that 40% of Vermont citizens, residents, are food insecure. We also have the program of sorry, here comes the dog. We also have a program for school and meal help. And my idea is to means test the school assistants. Students who qualify with a low enough family income would have their families qualify for apprenticeships, job opportunities that we could match with employers who are missing people. They will have the stipulation that the person who is going into the program will be able to, if they need to, cut their workday at 2:30, go home, be with the kids so that they don't have to have childcare in the afternoons. So it reduces those burdens. We need to really be sure that people who perhaps, if they're going to make more money this way, don't overqualify themselves out of existing programs like SNAP, other things that help them to make ends meet. But by taking the fact that we have employers who need people on this side and people who need well-paying jobs and training on the other side, we have programs available for internships, job training, apprenticeships, and we can match the people who need the work and the training to have careers, be able to build their own business, hang a shingle with the people who need the workers. And and there are already, and as Michelle mentioned, there are a lot of programs already in existence that we can learn from and use and modify to meet these needs.
Okay. Finishing up with Leslie. What would you do to specifically help the citizens and businesses of Windham County?
Thank you, Marty. I will consistently be available through Zoom and in-person meetings, emails, and phone calls to carefully listen and address questions and concerns of the citizens of Windham 3. When issues arise or when contacted by an individual or a business owner, I will continue to make appropriate connections with state government, advocates, and legislators with specific knowledge to answer questions and solve their problems. I will take to Montpelier what I learned here in Windham 3, so concerns and questions can be incorporated into appropriate legislation and budget development. Thank you.
Okay.
Good. Well, you guys have done an amazingly good job on time. We are way ahead of schedule. We had one less person join us, so we actually have a bonus of time. So we're going to go to a fourth optional question that we didn't think we'd be able to include, but we're going to do it anyway. So, Bonnie, if you could change one thing about Vermont government, what would it be, and why would you want to change it?
I think my connection is bad. I would like to see Vermont government be more balanced. And I guess that's as direct a way as I can put it.
I guess can I ask a follow-up then? What do you
You
mean
can.
by balanced? I mean, I don't understand what that means.
It means to first of all, dismantle the supermajority in Montpelier.
Oh, okay. So you mean more balanced
And
as
second,
opposed
to get a lot of politically balanced, right? And to get a lot of people who, as Tyler put it, do their research and then use critical thinking skills and don't just toe the party line and believe all the hype that's pushed through the grapevine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So next, Michelle, if you could change one thing about Vermont government, what would it be, and why would you want to change it?
So I thought a lot about this question, and the first answer that came to mind is the one that I'm going to share, which is that I think that after serving in the legislature for 2 years, one thing that I realized is that I serve with a lot of people who are retired, who are on Medicare, and I serve with a lot of people who have spouses who have health insurance so that they are able to get health benefits. And I serve with a few people that work full-time in order to get health benefits through their own work. But no one in the legislature, not a single person that works a member of the House or a member of the Senate gets any benefits. And I really think in terms of providing an opportunity for people of all socioeconomic backgrounds, of all family situations, people, whether they are single or married, whether they are older or younger, if we're going to have a diverse representation in the State House, we need to provide an opportunity for people who serve in the General Assembly to have health insurance. Because without health insurance, people can't serve. And I have met people who have told me they would like to run for office and they can't do it because they earn too much to qualify for Vermont Medicaid, and it would be too expensive for them to buy into the state system with the rates that it is right now and the low wage that people earn as representatives. So my priority would not be changing the wages for legislators, but I honestly think that it would be completely appropriate and advantageous to add a medical health insurance option for people who do not have that, so that we would make it more possible for a range of people to serve in our General Assembly.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Tyler, if you could change one thing about Vermont government, what would it be, and why would you want to change it?
This ought to be good.
I have been considering this question, and I came to the conclusion that the Vermont legislature will be glad to know that we can actually provide policy from a place of love and hope and optimism rather than from fear. Fear has dominated the narrative for the last 2 years, whether it's COVID or whether it's climate. Human-induced climate change is actually not, quote unquote, settled science. In fact, there's no such thing as settled science. Facts, policy are always up for debate. Elon Musk taking over Twitter is going to allow, perhaps, hopefully, voices that have been censored on a number of topics, including COVID, including climate, among others. And I'm not going to get too hot here, but there has not been a constructive debate with people who dissent from the narrative. Now, I'm going to tell you something as somebody who has a solar array on my house. I used to work in the solar industry. I like solar power. I like conservation. But here is a chart. And if you look at one chart, this is carbon dioxide's contribution to holding up. I'm new at Zoom, pardon me. But anyway, The fact is that that most of warming, most of the greenhouse effect occurs via water vapor. 60 to 95% of warming occurs with water vapor. That's why in winter, when we have cloudy nights, they're not as cold as those cold, clear nights where everything freezes when you breathe, okay? There are a lot of studies. There are astrophysicists, including those at Princeton, who understand and have done spectrographic analyses of carbon dioxide molecules, have found that there is diminishing returns for carbon dioxide warming effect. It starts up high and then it goes logarithmically lower. We're at 400. We've had 16 times that amount of concentration of carbon dioxide on this planet at 6,400 parts per million, and life flourished. Carbon dioxide is also known as plant food. Now, if you want to,
30 seconds, Tyler.
30 seconds?
30 seconds, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
There are a lot of orthodoxies that are being taken for granted, and the Foundation for Public Policy, especially in Vermont, that I believe need to be methodically and thoroughly and rationally questioned, and I will do that. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Perfect. Great.
Okay.
And that was, and then Leslie.
Leslie.
I don't know why I keep thinking we're over, but Leslie, what if you could change one thing about Vermont government, what would it be and why? Leslie.
So I observed many of the things that Michelle observed and talked about. I'd like to have an in-depth and honest conversation about the structure of our legislature going beyond healthcare, although I think healthcare would be a really great start. Members of the legislature only get paid when in session from January to May, but the work is year-round with required constituent services and research regarding committee topics. Many members must maintain their jobs even when we're in session, which is hugely stressful. The current design favors those who are retired or those who have financial support from family. It's difficult for those with children to serve. So because of this structure, our legislature, as Michelle said, is seriously lacking in diversity. And I believe an in-depth evaluation should be taken of our structure. Thank you.
Thank you. Right now we're set to go to closing remarks. We're looking at our time. We have more time than we had originally anticipated. We had talked about 3-minute closing remarks. I'd like to open that up so that each person could have 5 minutes for their closing remarks, and that would relax things a little bit and give you a little more time to state anything you hadn't had a chance to state, and talk about who you are and why we should vote for you. So let's start closing remarks with Bonnie. Oh, and before we start, I want to just say I want to thank you guys for coming on. And I realize Zoom is a sort of a really clunky way of doing this,
It is.
but you have really soldiered through, and I'm very pleased. And Tyler, I think you're doing a great job with Zoom. I don't know that I can master it either. So closing remarks, let's start with Bonnie.
So I'd first like to thank all of my running mates. And I heard a lot of good ideas here. I heard some clarification of some of my ideas. And I just want to say that we all have more ideas than we could possibly have time to state in this forum. And I will do my very best to represent my constituents, to use our Constitution as my guidepost, and I will always do what is fair and legal for Vermont citizens. Again, I can talk about many, many ideas that have been opened up tonight and even more. I'd like to wish everybody good luck. And I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to Michelle, if you want to make closing remarks.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, first of all, thanks so much to Fact TV for offering a neutral space where we could share our ideas. I appreciate the format and I appreciate you being willing to facilitate. And I appreciate everybody showing up and being respectful and actually finding that we have some things in common is good because sometimes you don't know until you share ideas, and that's what we're doing here. I'd like to take some of my closing time to give a little bit of background about myself. I think one of the things that makes me a really strong legislator is that I have a lot of experience and a lot of variety of work life experiences that are relevant to being in the legislature. So I'm 55 years old. I've lived in Vermont for 20 years. I've worked as a teacher for almost 20 years. I've worked as a youth program director, both as a case manager for youth who were housing insecure, and also as a program director in a program that worked at 3 different high schools in Windham County, which did career development for youth who had disabilities, workforce challenges in terms of entering the workforce. I also have worked in restorative justice with people who were released from prison. I've been a classroom teacher for many, many years. I've developed youth leadership programs and taught those in the Governor's Institute in the summer. So I've worked in a lot of different areas that give me a slice of experience in challenges people are facing. I've experienced working closely with people who are homeless. I've experienced working closely with people who had substance use disorders and mental health challenges, and then we're trying to get into recovery without adequate services. I've also served on boards as a way of serving my community prior to being elected. So I was a member of the board of HCRS working on supporting mental health resources for a couple of years before I was elected. I served on the board of NAMI Vermont, which is another one related to mental health resources in Vermont. And I recently actually have joined the board of Greater Falls Connection, again, working on substance use prevention and also working on policies and opportunities for youth that can help to do prevention services as well as help people who have had challenges. So all of those different life experiences have given me an ability to have an understanding about some challenges in terms of our community and also some examples of some things that are working. I've seen the HCRS mental health liaison come into the police barracks in Westminster and work miracles with people who are in crisis, preventing an escalation of crisis, which has happened in other parts of the state, and helping people to really be able to be matched with the services they need in a really effective way. I've seen a lot of different things that have helped me to understand what's working, what isn't working, what do we need more of, what do we need less of. I've served on the Corrections and Institutions Committee in the State House. It's my hope in the next legislative cycle that I'll be working in human services. I have a really wide background working with youth and families and individuals, and I would really like to take this diverse background and I would like to apply that to 2 more years, another biennium of working on making policy with people from all around our state. It's a great honor to serve our community as a representative. It's an enormous amount of work, but it's a great honor. And I look forward to serving the people of Westminster and coming 2 years, and I hope that that is possible. So thank you to everyone for participating. Thanks to Fact TV for hosting us, and I look forward to serving the community for a couple more years in this role.
Good. Thanks, Michelle. Tyler, are you ready to do your closing remarks? You have 5 minutes.
Yowza, I did not have 5 minutes worth of closing remarks prepared, so forgive me while I wing it. But as I reflect on the journey that has brought us all here together, thank you all for putting this together. I'm getting a little emotional here, by surprise. My family goes back in this state and again, this is not to play that card as therefore you are, but I have deep, deep family roots here in this state. And back into the early 1800s, when one of my forebears was kicked by a horse, killed while he was culling livestock. His wife took over the farm and wanted to keep it, but eventually had to sell it after local political figures were harassing her livestock and eventually pinned down her best gander with a stake. They wanted to take that 100 acres, and she eventually had to leave it. And she blamed the local political class for those actions. Vermont has always been, and my recollection of my family and the way that they work is that we're a taciturn people. We value self-reliance. We value our ability to negotiate winter, mud season. We like our neighbors. We like them at arm's length. We know that someday they could be pulling us out of that ditch, just like we're going to pull them out of it this time. There is a history and a strong sense of freedom and unity right from the flag, okay? And as I have observed more and more, I did not want to get involved in this. I did not want to get into a political race. But to the questions of salary and benefits and healthcare, this is service. And even my minimal campaign, because I have a job and I have other components of my life, I've run, I will admit, a half-ass campaign. I have not knocked on enough doors. I have not done enough outreach because I can't, okay? This is not something I asked for, but it's something that I felt obligated to do, especially in 2020 after as I had that experience of voting and not having anybody to vote against the policies that I found, frankly, abhorrent around COVID-19 here. The economy has been wrecked. I work with small businesses. They have been wrecked. We have a community watering hole, restaurant, nice space. He can't put together staff and have consistent rules and regulations so that he can actually operate that place and make enough money to stay open. Now we want those people who have destroyed the economy for the last 2 years to come up with fixes for the economy and for our quality of life? I don't think so. And another thing that is coming up, and it comes to what we would tell our people in Montpelier, is that I consider the Vermont economy a fish tank economy. We are in the tank and we wait for the Fed to print money, sprinkle it to us, and then to spread that largesse through our community groups and our funding mechanisms throughout the economy. I have bad news for you. That trickle, that fish food is going to stop, because with inflation, there's no longer free money from the Fed.
30 seconds, Tyler.
Okay? We're going to pay a lot of money nationally just to service the interest on the debt, which means we're going to get a lot less federal money in Vermont, which means a lot of these programs that we love and we want to distribute the money from are not going to be here. We have to be adults. We're going to have to make cuts, and we're going to have to restructure our economy in a way that actually produces and allows us to stand on our own 2 feet again.
Thank you, Tyler. You did come up with 5 minutes. It was good. Leslie, you have 5 minutes for closing remarks.
Thank you. I'm just going to start with the comments on climate change, which I didn't get to make. In Vermont, 40% of our carbon emissions come from the transportation sector and 34% come from the heating sector. I would like to focus on 3 things in the next session. First, we need to stay committed to the climate action plan with dates. It's too important to let up. Second, I would like the clean heat standard to be reintroduced with focus on weatherization, which reduces fuel needs and costs for homeowners and reduces carbon emissions. And third, we need to continue to work on transportation emissions with electrification of vehicles and a reliable build out of the required infrastructure. Even though climate change is a global problem and Vermont's contribution feels minuscule, I believe we need to do our part. My 1-year-old granddaughter is always in my thoughts when I see extraordinary examples of global warming with destructive hurricanes, flooding, and drought. We are not immune to these things here in Vermont. I would like to thank again, as everyone did, Marty, Mike, Alex, and the people at Fact TV for hosting this forum. Should I be reelected in my 2nd term, I'll continue to work to improve healthcare quality and access while reducing costs, and work with my colleagues to pass policies on education, climate change, jobs, social justice, and reproductive liberty, among many other things. I have made constituent communication a priority and will continue to do so. I was honored to be elected to serve the constituents of Old Windham 3 in 2020, and I'm running again to use the knowledge I've gained in the last 2 years to serve the constituents of New Windham 3. I will continue to focus on democratic values, equity, prosperity for all, healthcare for all, justice and community safety, education from pre-K through 16, and protecting our democracy. Thank you all for voting. If you already have returned your ballot, polls will be open in our towns on election day if you haven't voted yet. If you've not made up your mind about whom to vote for in the Windham 3 House race, I hope this forum has given you some more information. Please contact me with your questions through my website, lesliegoldmanvt.com. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is that concludes the input from our candidates this evening. Mm-hmm. I'd just like to throw in a little, pitch for Fact TV. Fact TV is a local access TV station. We hear all these great ideas around election time, but we're here for all the other time too. And if any of the candidates or anyone else would like to come on and express their opinions and educate the voters as to what their thoughts are about these things, you can do that on Fact TV, and it's an easy thing to do. You too
can have your own show.
You too can have your own show. You could do that, but even if you didn't want to have your own show, you could come on and be a guest on someone else's show. We would be glad to facilitate that and to interview you. And I hope that any of the candidates that are elected and win their elections will come on Fact and continue to educate us as to what's happening at the legislature and what we should be aware of, because this is how this works. I mean, this is in order to make, I believe an educated constituency is an important part. And it's important for improving our communities and important for improving our government. So I thank the candidates for coming on, for expressing their opinions, and being so passionate about their beliefs and what they want to do. Go ahead, Barney.
I would just echo Mike's sentiments, and yes, to know that Fact TV is available. It's that's what Fact TV does. It gives the voice to the public. So thank you all for coming on tonight, and and just being a very congenial. Is that the right word?
Congenial. Yes,
respectful. Yeah,
all sorts of good things.
Yeah. And you all know what your voice is, and you stated it well tonight. So thank you all.
Okay, and that's it for our show tonight. We're going to be coming on again at 6:30, and we're going to be having a similar event with the Senate candidates. So thank you, and that's it for us.